it's difficult to talk to Peter without realizing how much he loves movies, and he's always moving away from himself to something else. But we talked a little bit last night about you and John Cassavetes, and I think it might surprise people here to know that you were good friends with John Cassavetes, simply because most people wouldn't necessarily associate your work with his. And I wonder, does he have any effect on your work after you get to know him?
Well, I think St. Jack was influenced by John. I used Ben Gazzara in that, and Benny had worked with John in a number of pictures. And we kept saying a line from one of Cassavetes' pictures all the way through making St. Jack. No cute. No cute. Don't be cute. We kept saying that all the time. And because we didn't want to, we tried to make a movie in which none of the scenes you expect were there. And it won the Critics' Prize at Venice, I'm happy to say, in a year when they weren't giving prizes. And we're the only ones that got one. And it's a picture it's hard to see right now because Roger Corman owns it and he's notoriously cheap. So he hasn't struck a new print since, for quite a while. But it's coming out on DVD again, a new company's bringing it out. It's one of my best pictures. I think it had an influence, John had an influence on it, in terms of the sort of seemingly improvised nature of it. Although John didn't really improvise. The reputation was that he improvised everything, but the truth is, he wrote it all. Somebody once asked Peter Faulk, was the films with John improvised? And Peter said, who can improvise? That's good. Who can improvise lines that good? Nobody. John writes it. John used to dictate his scripts, like Preston Sturges did. And then he'd correct them. I love John. He was a real revolutionary. He was always plotting some overthrow of something. Always, right up to the end. When he was desperately sick, ill, with the cirrhosis of the liver, I said, how do you feel about it? He says, fuck them if they can't take a joke.
I read somewhere that after you worked with Cassavetes, you changed a little bit the way you wrote. That you kind of changed the lines the day before shooting, or
well, I had gotten to I started doing that anyway, because I found that, one time, I was having a conversation with Orson Welles, and he looked at me and he said, the terrible thing about movies is they're canned. And I said, what? They're canned. I don't follow you, Orson. They come in cans. Yeah, okay. So, well, anything that's canned isn't exactly fresh, is it? So then I thought, well, okay, when do they can things? At their freshest. So I thought it helps if the dialogue hasn't been learned for weeks and weeks. But if they just get it just before we make it, it can't help but be fresh. So on a couple of pictures, particularly on They All Laughed and St. Jack, and to a degree on Mask as well, particularly the stuff with Cher, I would tend to write it just before we shot it. We knew there was going to be a scene there, and we knew what it would be about, but we didn't set the dialogue definitely until just before we made it. And it was fresh. Sometimes the actors said, well, give me a minute to learn it. Okay, I'll give you a minute. Spencer Tracy was famous for never learning his lines absolutely perfectly, but it gave him the sense that he knew them just enough so that he'd have to search for it. Michael Caine does that. I work with him. He does that too.
By the way, since you brought up Michael Caine, there's a wide variety of tones and moods in your work. but one of the things that strikes me about you is the few times that you've done farce, you're extremely good at it. I'm thinking of What's Up, Doc, and a little bit Paper Moon is farce in some ways, but especially Noises Off. I don't know if anybody here has seen Peter's version of Noises Off. I fall on the floor laughing every time I see that movie. And I wanted to ask you, is there some difference in the technique of directing farce than, in a movie like The Last Picture Show or something like that?
Well, obviously it's a difference in tempo, but it's a question of playing it for real, not trying to be funny. But the situations are funny. The situation is funny. The tempo is faster than normal. Capra gave me that hint once. I was talking to Capra and I said, we're talking about pacing in pictures. And he said, I won't do Frank Capra because he stammered a lot. It would take forever. If you play something normal speed, that's the way you go. Normal speed, if you play something normal speed, it'll seem slow. If you play it a little bit faster than normal speed, it'll seem normal. So if you wanted to play fast, you really got to speed up. And he's right. So, on a number of pictures, you've asked the actors, what did Peter say to you? And they'll tell you, mainly he said to do it faster. I did a picture with Sidney Poitier for television, and I never gave him any direction except I'd go over and say, a little faster, where I go. And I'm amazed, he always did, and he never ever said, can't you think of any other direction? He just always did it. But it is true, speed is something that we've forgotten. You look at even Capra's dramas, they're paced very quickly. Which reminds me of something John said about Capra, Cassavetes, a great line. He said, maybe there never was an America, maybe it was all Capra. But I love doing comedy. There's nothing more fun than getting an audience to laugh.
You think, I was just asking myself as you were talking about speed, I know there are certain Hawks movies that are very fast, but there are other funny ones that seem to me to be paced a little more leisurely way. I don't know how to explain that. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
Well, McCarry is more leisurely.
Yeah.
But still faster than most films today.